Hey there, welcome to House Talk. On this episode, we're going to be talking manufactured home construction. Manufactured homes are not built like regular homes, and there's some really important things that distinguish them. Whether you're buying a manufactured home, selling one as a real estate agent, or inspecting one as a home inspector, there's some really important things to understand. So we brought in Donnie Hester. He is a home inspector with North Central Washington Home Inspections, and he's going to help us understand a bit more about manufactured home construction. Donnie, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, Dylan. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, happy to do it. So, Don, I want to talk a little bit about your business here. You are a home inspector in sort of Wenatchee area, is that right?
Yeah, Central Washington, Wenatchee. I'm based in Wenatchee and kind of cover a broad area here. People always ask me, where do you go? I go, kind of anywhere you pay me to go.
Yeah, that's a big area, right? It's not very dense. I mean, I drove from Leavenworth to Wenatchee, and there's a big open space there.
Yeah, yeah. So, and then, I cover a lot of mountain region. And so, I kind of am seeing quite a variety of climates. Because we're kind of like steppe shrub here in Wenatchee, so very arid, desert-like. And then as you move back up towards the mountains, you'll go through a variety of climate zones. So I see quite a variety of
Yep.
environments that you'll see here.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. Cool. If you guys don't know Don Hester from any social media stuff, he's really worth following. I actually, I think, sort of met Don, so to speak, on like Twitter or something, and I was surprised that this home inspector is posting such incredibly useful information, and I enjoyed it. And then it turns out later, Don and I ended up teaching together up at Bellingham Technical College. But here's some links to his stuff, and if you're listening, we'll try to get some of his links on the YouTube channel here. But good person to follow to get good home inspection information. So anyway, today we wanted to talk about manufactured home construction. I remember, I was asked to do, I almost never do a new manufactured home. And I was called, I think it was around 2017 to do one. And I show up and I open up the electric panel cover and there's no AFCIs, which if you're a home inspector and you're working on the 2015 IRs or NEC, you're sort of shocked, like where are the AFCIs? And so I reached out to Don. I was confused, and Don kind of straightened me out on some things with manufactured homes. So why don't you tell us a little bit about how manufactured homes are different, some basic things we should understand.
Yeah. So first off, most people are familiar with what we refer to as a stick frame home, and they're going to be under the IRC, International Residential Code, and so the International Residential Code is going to be a bit prescriptive code that says if you build this box and you stay within these parameters, you can do all these sort of things.
Mm-hmm.
So it can be pretty wide based and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Now, with manufactured homes, we actually are under a different code. It's called the CFR, or the Code of Federal Regulations. And they have their own set of criteria. It's going to be very similar to the IRC in many respects, but there are some nuanced stuff different. The other thing with a manufactured home, you're in a highly engineered environment. So these homes, for weight issues and stuff, and because they're going to ship them over roads and stuff, they've engineered these things down to kind of a very minutia details. So it kind of starts changing what can we do as homeowners. If you buy a manufactured home, you have a whole actually set of rules that kind of goes along with them.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of is different than a residential home where you can kind of have this big box you can kind of play with in a sense.
Yeah, that's a great point. Now, I mean, this is a neat just conversation about engineering a little bit, but I remember building some beach stairs on my own once, and I didn't have an engineer, and the result was I built these things that circus elephants could walk down. I mean, they were totally overbuilt, right?
Right.
And the whole point of engineering is we can build something kind of as light and as efficient as possible that will do its job, but you're not sort of building insane redundancy into the structure of the system. So that's, I think, kind of what you're alluding to here. These are really highly engineered to be as light and kind of specific as possible.
Yeah, kind of, talking to some engineering friends, they'll say, anybody can overbuild something. It takes an engineer to use as few materials as possible,
That's right.
you know.
Yeah,
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 and so and that's sort of the kind of the premise of a manufactured home. Especially if you get into these older manufactured homes, you're going to find walls that are like 2x3s. They're not even
yep,
2x4s,
yep.
and like light grade paneling. They and the modern like the one you were describing, the 217 is going to be very similar to a
Hmm.
stick frame.
Hmm.
It's typically a 2x6 wall, and then a lot of that came because of energy codes
Yep, yep,
to get them, get the wall thickness up so they could get enough insulation into them. But you're still basically putting these things that are built on a frame.
yep.
So you have a metal frame under there, and then you'll have wood framing on top of that.
Hmm.
So if you took that framing away, you kind of have a stick frame home, but they still are going to be engineered. And then typically your roof assembly is going to be much more engineered. Typically, rarely do you get to look into one
Hmm.
because they're almost always sealed
Yep,
in the attic spaces.
yep.
But if you ever got a chance, you would find that the trusses up there are pretty small compared to what you would normally see in a stick frame home.
Yeah, yeah, I've seen those once before. I mean, they almost look like, they're just such tiny dimensional lumber. It looks sort of alarming when you're used to a regular truss.
Yeah, and it kind of, even in a stick frame, when we get into truss systems, these are engineered systems and they're built to work as a unit.
Hmm.
And that's, even though, I could probably come up with a simple repair to some stuff, you still got to kind of go down the path of an engineer,
Yep, because it's an
because of those
engineered
calculations
system.
involved.
Yeah. Now,
Yep,
and this is interesting. So we have so they fall under the HUD code, right? Housing and Urban Development.
correct.
And
Yep,
it's 76, I believe, was the demarcation. We used to call them mobile homes, but anyone built prior or post 76 is really a manufactured home is the correct term for it. Isn't that right?
correct. Yeah, that the pre-76 homes, the mobile home, and you'll find actually a sticker on them, and it'll say mobile home on them.
Okay.
It kind of looks like a label more. I shouldn't say a sticker; it's more of a label.
Hmm.
When you get into manufactured homes, they actually have a label on
Yeah.
them. Uh,
Okay.
and they kind of was, they were having issues with quality control and stuff like that. They're kind of, the mobile homes are almost RVs,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
anybody's used to RV living, they'll kind of relate to that.
Yeah. Those are
And so
real
that's
tin cans,
yeah,
right? I mean, compared to a house.
yeah, yeah, exactly. I mean, yeah, and then so 76 is sort of that demarcation point where they'll start upgrading kind of the systems. Even though I would say those really up to the 90s, they were pretty thinly built.
Okay. Yeah. So is there a time when you feel like manufactured homes have become a lot more reliable and better? Is there sort of a rough date demarcation?
Yeah, I would say probably you kind of get in the 2000s.
Yep.
You'll start seeing, that's when you start seeing the 2x6 wall structure.
Okay. Yeah, that's a
I think
good thing to look for.
that's kind of the when it starts really, they're getting a little better built.
Yep.
Um,
That's a cool thing to look for. I hadn't really thought about that, but I have noticed that. I mean, 2000s too, you start pulling out of all those 90s recalls, right? You hit a 90s one, it's the LP siding and it's the polybutylene pipes, and it's like every recalled product you could come up with.
right. Yeah. And the whole polybutylene thing is a tough one because a lot of these piping systems are really dependent on where you're at.
Hmm.
How's your water? Does it react? I mean, for my area as an example, I don't see the issues with polybutylene that some people will see, like maybe in Nevada or something like that, where
Hmm.
their water reacted much differently with that. And each piping system has its weakness in a sense.
Yeah. Interesting.
Copper is bad down in the southeast, so
That's right.
where we
Yeah.
kind of consider that the gold standard up here.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, Northeast, I know you can get a lot of pitting and stuff in the copper. It can be a problem.
Right.
Yeah, that's interesting. Well, another reason that understanding regional trends is just so important because you can't
Yeah.
hard to have a national conversation. So let's dive in. I mean, that's just a general overview of some things that are different about manufactured homes. Let's I just wanted to dive in real quick to kind of some nitty gritty here with and I figured we'd choose electrical code because again, this was the thing that kind of shocked me when I was doing a new one that wow, this thing doesn't follow the NEC. What's going on with that? So what code do they use for electrical with manufactured homes?
So yeah, and the CFR, if you dive in there and kind of look at that, which is CFR 243280.801, you get in there and it defines that when they are building a manufactured home, they're using the 2005 NEC.
Okay.
So think fast forward here in Washington State, we're under the 2017 NEC. I mean,
Yep.
a lot has happened between those code cycles.
Yeah, big time. Yeah. That's
And then
interesting. So, go ahead.
yeah, so and so one of the big things, and then when they say, excuse me, when they say they adopt the 2005 NEC, they actually have some caveats to that also, as you're pulling up here. When it comes to AFCIs, it basically says if you install arc fault protection, you will install it per the 2005 NEC, which would be bedrooms only.
Yeah, interesting.
And so then, here, AFCI is pretty much on everything that's a 120 volt system that's not a bathroom or a garage.
Yeah.
So it's pretty much the whole house is covered in AFCIs today.
Yeah. And why do you think it is that they're slower to adopt our electrical codes?
I think it's just, it's so much more difficult to upgrade the CFRs. I mean, my background, I came out of the biotech world, and I was in the world of CFRs, and it's a very complex system and
Yeah.
slow to change.
So just bureaucracy, essentially. I mean, it's just hard to change it. Yeah. Interesting. So this is a good takeaway here. You're a home inspector. You're a homeowner buying a manufactured home. We're kind of stuck on the 2005 NEC for wiring standards, and that would be all normal and acceptable based on this HUD electrical code. So interesting stuff to know there. Kind of an important example of how, as a home inspector, it's pretty helpful to you can't know all of the different codes all the years, but at least having a general grasp of sort of how they've morphed over the years is pretty helpful.
Yeah, and then kind of the big thing with this, and I've actually talked to, so like where I'm at, LNI is the jurisdiction over the electrical and manufactured homes. They are actually the jurisdictional body for any of the factory assembled structures.
Yeah.
That's kind of what they call it. They have their own special division. But once the home is placed and you're living in it, and then now you're under this regular NEC guidelines. So, and I had this conversation. So, you buy this home, they install it. It's kind of a 2005 code. And now I decided I don't like the receptacle color. I want to change them to brown from the white or almond, And now you actually have jumped into the 2017 NEC.
Sure. We're modifying the system, so we have to make it
correct.
2017 NEC. Fascinating. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so
that grandfathering is gone.
Yeah, but that would only require you to do whichever circuits you touch, right? So if you like,
correct.
We're going to put different colored receptacles in the kitchen, then your kitchen, would have to comply with the 2017. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So a little nuance, and this is I do fret a little bit this one. We get in some interpret. So I've talked to some of the inspectors, and they kind of say, if you're just doing one or two receptacles, they don't really care. But that's sort of that slippery slope, because it becomes a purely interpretive thing based on whatever jurisdictional inspector you have. And you'll have one area that's going to be much stricter and one area that's going to be lighter. So you start getting all over the place with some of that stuff.
Yeah, that's interesting. And you brought up something really important. So, and this probably changes per state, but in Washington state, it's L&I that covers not just the electrical, but the entire home. So it's not going down to your building department, right? It's L&I is
Correct. Yeah, a lot of times they'll work in conjunction with the building department, but L&I is the official jurisdictional oversight. And L&I, for anybody who doesn't know, is Labor and Industries.
Thank you. Yeah, and I would imagine you'd still have to work with the building department because you've got zoning issues and all kinds of just site.
Yeah, the foundation stuff. That all typically lands on the local jurisdiction.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting stuff here. So I brought up a slide here. You want to tell us a little bit? This is about just exterior electrical, some key things to understand about this on mobile homes, or excuse me, manufactured homes.
So almost, I would say 99% of all manufactured homes are going to have your main service equipment, which is your main disconnecting means for the home, is going to be out, usually on a pedestal away from the home. So and so they do have some rules about, how far these can be away, 30 feet and stuff like that. But, this kind of jumps into that, what is your service equipment? Because that defines all these other rules that follow behind that. And so for manufactured homes, they're almost always on these pedestals. And so that's going to be your main service equipment. And then very common out there, you're going to have your main disconnect for the home. So typically in my region, it's always 200 amps or better. 200 amps is almost everything. And then quite often you'll have another breaker or something out there feeding to like a shop or some other thing, and it'll all be there. But that is your service equipment. So that's where your neutral and grounds bond together.
And that's important. So each panel in a manufactured, you'd expect to be wired as a sub then?
Correct. They'll all be 4-wire feeds.
Okay. Yeah, that's important. Yeah, so that's really, if you're out inspecting houses, that's just an important distinction, that the panel you should be expecting to find a 4-wire feed sub panel inside, and then the main disconnect is the main service is usually out at the meter at this sort of pole with, outside. Good stuff. And you get some height things. I mean, a lot of this looks fairly similar to NEC guidelines with like the height over things. Yeah.
And the diagram you got up there on the screen, that I think comes from Chelan County.
Okay.
Is where I located at.
Cool. Good stuff. Yeah. Let's see. We've got the diagram here. You want to tell us a little bit about this one? I think it's just a little more specific of what we were talking about, right? Where the
this is a close-up diagram. This is a very typical installation that I will see. One of the big things I do find with manufactured homes is that they put these pedestals on, and quite often they're fairly close to the home itself. And then people start building structures, add on decks and stuff like that, and they start encroaching on the space requirements of that pedestal.
Yeah,
That's
interesting.
something to be very conscious of when you're out looking at these homes, that we still maintain our spacing. The other thing I find is sometimes people try to bury them in vegetation because they don't want to see them.
Oh, yeah.
So that's the other thing. Sometimes it's a little search, seek, and destroy mission to find them.
That's true. I can think of some where, they're behind like a giant fir tree or something, and you just can't figure out where they are. Yeah, no, that's interesting.
Yeah, I've seen them buried in hedges, and it's like
well, it's not the prettiest thing in the world. Yeah, that's interesting. Good stuff. And so here we're talking about, I think just this is the specific language of the arc faults. Is that correct here?
Yeah. Yep.
Cool. Yeah. That's great. So good stuff here, Don. So anyway, I mean, I think the important takeaway here is if you're looking at buying a manufactured home or inspecting them, there's certainly a lot of things that are different. You probably, whatever state you're in, even whatever county you're in, you probably want to try to get familiar with what set of rules guide the construction there, but it's typically going to be different than your local building department for a stick framed house, and you're probably going off of the HUD codes, which those are national. So some great information there, Don. I really appreciate it. Again, I got the links up here if you're watching on YouTube. Don's a very useful person to follow if you're a home inspector or if you're interested in real estate in general. So he's got some good information. So, and I know Don is working on a full class for manufactured homes, which would be useful. We just kind of grazed the surface of it here today, but some good stuff. Thanks for being here, Don. I really appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, Dylan. And, anybody can always feel free to contact me if they have any questions, and I'm always willing to help out.
Oh, that's great. Well, we'll try to get links to some of your stuff up just so that people can find you. That's great. Well, thanks for being here today. Really appreciate it.
All right. Have a great day.
Yeah, you too. Cheers. As always, a big thanks to our sponsors, The Confident House Hunter, a fantastic resource for helping home buyers and realtors get out in front of the home inspection. A big thanks to House Talk for hosting this podcast. And as always, thanks to Scribeware Software, the best home inspection report software in the industries. Thanks for your support.